In this video, I'm going to cover a few topics that are included in Chapter 9 for this unit this week. So let me give you a situation that happened to me. I'm playing in a tennis tournament and my wife is sitting pretty far away. I need to cool off. And my usual strategy, besides toweling off and drinking, is to actually pour some water over the back of my neck, particularly when I get very overheated. It can get quite humid, 90 degrees, and where you can get sick, and I'd have to drop out of a tennis tournament. So dousing myself with a little water on the back of my neck is really cold, but it works. So I use a nonverbal sign to my wife. I get her attention. I hold up the bottle that I'm drinking, and I actually tend to drink soda pop, diet soda sometimes, so it was Mountain Dew, but I also had a water bottle. So I'm holding up this bottle, dumping it, pretending to dump it down the back of my neck, and I'm looking, and it looks like she understands. What that means to her is go get me some, because I can't. I'm in the middle of a tournament taking just a short break, so she'll get it and stick it at the back of the court discreetly, and then I can cool myself off. I had brought some water and some Diet Mountain Dew, but it wasn't enough. It was just getting very hot that day. So I think we have this understanding with nonverbal communication. So she gets me a Mountain Dew to pour over myself. I have no other options, and it's not even Diet Mountain Dew. So it's all sticky and sugary, and I'm standing there on the side in between games in this tennis set we're playing, which actually was the finals of the tournament. I won, which was nice. And so I'm taking this Mountain Dew, pouring it down my back, and gosh, so yucky, sticky, warm, whatever, but you do what you gotta do. So that shows you how sometimes nonverbal communication can really miss some things. It tends to be very important to we human beings as well as animals like our pets, but there are some things that it can't do. The specificity and details in verbal communication are necessary sometimes, but sometimes we can make mistakes. So what are the common so we'll talk about some of these mistakes. I have my cards here. So abstract, vague language. You see the sign down there. This is often not so helpful. Abstract means it is something that's not specific. So when we talk about things, we say, this class at school is so-and-so. It's an example of abstract language. We're not being very specific. Psychology class is interesting. It sounds positive, but it doesn't say very much. It's broad, vague, general, and so it's missing some things. So yeah, sometimes it's more helpful to avoid misunderstandings to be clear and specific. Here is a type of abstract language that can sometimes be a problem. Static language. Static, it says unchanging. Static means something stays the same. So sometimes when we talk about things and people, we use that. Just use this as an example. Alan is blank. Fill in the blank. Good or bad, but negatives tend to have more problems. So you want to say, my friend Alan is judgmental. Okay. Well, for one, judgmental is an abstract word. It's not very specific. But also, this sentence is stated as if it's unchanging. He's always this way. Alan is late. That is a little bit more specific. Not how many minutes late, but it's saying it's constant. It's always, and that's rarely true. There are exceptions to the rule, and we're different at different times. So static language can be another problem. Next, you versus I language. You'll read a lot about this in the chapter, really stressing how I language is much preferred. You language, particularly when we're talking about negative things, interacting with others, causes people to feel defensive. They don't listen very well. You can't get your message across. I language talks about oneself. And also, you language may be inaccurate. You are this way, you are so blah, blah, blah. Fill that in with a blank. I'm feeling confused in this relationship. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I wish this. Those kinds of statements are safer and more effective in communication. So there's some examples. Now, some of this video is going to be sort of amusing, I hope. because we have some examples of verbal language problems and mistakes that we make sometimes. Sometimes they're helpful, but sometimes they can be a problem. Euphemisms. Euphemism. A euphemism is a word or a phrase that is vague or general on purpose. It often is to avoid discomfort, to make somebody feel less threatened, to help people save face, save embarrassment in public situations. But sometimes you miss getting the proper point across and people don't quite get the idea. Sometimes it's made for people to feel better about things. I had heard that people who work at Subway are called sandwich artists. I called up T-Mobile one day. I was talking to needed tech support. Says having a problem with my phone. Person answers the phone. He says, well, hello, sir. I'll be your tech wizard today. And I'm thinking, wizard? Is this Harry Potter? Are you going to create something for me? And actually, he wasn't such a wizard. It took him a long time, and I had to call back. Go figure. So here's an example. I borrowed this from somebody else I had heard it from. A woman sends her husband out to the store to get feminine protection. So what does he come back with? Pepper spray. Okay. That's one of the problems with euphemisms, is people may not quite get the point. Or, as in the case of dying, death, dying. This is not something that we're very comfortable with, so we often use euphemisms to soften the blow, to make people feel less discomfort, less distress, less embarrassment, things like that. But sometimes imagine a young child, you could miss the point. We use the words passed on. In the hospital, you have expired. You haven't died, you've expired. I noticed one day when I was at religious services, they were reading out of the prayer book in the synagogue at the part of the service where they have prayer for people who have passed away and died. And they talked about people going to their eternal rest. That doesn't sound so bad. I wouldn't mind going to an eternal rest. Sounds like a spa, maybe. Whatever. Anyways, syntax. Syntax, not syntax. Syntax, S-Y-N-T-A-X. This is how words and letters and spacing and sounds are put together in a language to convey something, where you can get confusion or even misinterpretations in some pretty negative ways if you put things together incorrectly. They're done differently in different cultures and languages. So in Spanish, the adjective comes after the noun in a typical sentence, which is the opposite of English. Or here's a spacing example. Saw this on a TV show. So, sign is supposed to read this. Somebody's putting up a sign on a new building for a new business. It's supposed to read John Smith, therapist. But he runs out of space at the very end. So he breaks up the word at the end, and this is how it looks. Hopefully you can read my writing. John Smith, the rapist. Oops. Okay. Or another example of the syntax. Another one is from Spanish. So if you say, te quiero, papa, you've said, I love you, potato, instead of I love you, father, because you didn't put the accent in the right place in the word papa, or papa, as I should say. I think I'm getting that one right. Or a husband goes on a trip to Hawaii. He tells his wife it's a business trip, but no, he's up to some no good. So to cover his butt, he sends a postcard, and he writes this at the very end. Having a great time. Wish you were. Oops. Her. He left off the E at the very end. That's a syntax mistake. Okay. One more example of verbal language problem. Equivocal. Something that could be interpreted in multiple ways so that the meaning and communication goes haywire in some ways. Funniest example I can think of this one was an episode of the 1970s TV sitcom Taxi. So one of the characters goes into the DMV. He's taking his driver's exam and writing. His buddies are sitting across the hallway, and he wants to cheat because he doesn't know one of the answers. So he whispers to one of his buddies, says, hey, what does a yellow light mean? And the guy says, hey, I can't help you. You're cheating. Be quiet. He's just so persistent that eventually the guy says, what does yellow light mean? The guy says, slow down. So the guy that filling out the test says, gets a little frustrated. What does a yellow light mean? And the guy who's helping him cheat says, slow down. So he says, what does, and so on and so forth. So if you want to see that, I don't know if that one is on YouTube, but it was one of the memorable moments for me. So these are a variety of problems in language. And again, our units cover chapters 9, 10, and 11. And that's the video for today. See you next time.